All right, I think we're ready to get started. If everybody can take their seat. So, on behalf of Obesity Canada, thank you so much for coming to this closing ceremony. We're going to have a great talk just to end the proceedings of the week. As you know, any organization feeds off those that are here. And we have to say it's been a super great week. I think we can all agree on that, that we have had some wonderful presentations from experienced researchers in obesity, but also those that are new to the field and those that have been studying in the field. And I think we set up a really nice program, and I hope everybody enjoyed it. If you have not yet joined Obesity Canada, now that you've been here, you understand that it's an important organization to be part of, and I hope you will join. And another bonus, it's free. We certainly have some advocacy things to do, so if you haven't yet sent your letter by email to your politicians, please do. I did it at lunch. It takes like 30 seconds. And a couple of other things that before we get on to the main events of tonight. The Science Committee is again reformed, and we have now subgroups, and I'm saying this because the website was not working. It is currently working, so if you're interested in joining one of our subcommittees on the science committees, we have weight bias, basic biomedical science, clinical practice, and population health and health systems committees. So if those interest you, please apply via the website. We also have a draw. If you're kind enough to into recycling, there's a basket out right there. And if you put your stuff in there, we're going to do a draw for registration for the next conference, so free registration. So I think it was free, or did I just make it a big deal? Okay, good. Maybe it was a 10% discount, but okay, it's free now, so that's good. So I think that's it for housekeeping. Oh, and thank the Weston too. I thought we had some really, being in nutrition, some really nice healthy meals and snacks. So appreciate that from the Weston. So to get on to the honoree of the evening, TOPS Club, which stands for Taking Pounds Off Sensibly, has been a sponsor of Canadian Obesity Network and now Obesity Canada for a number of years, and we certainly appreciate their involvement and sponsorship. And one of their awards is the Award of Excellence for a new or young, and sometimes both, investigator in obesity in Canada. So I'm going to ask Dawn Whiting from TOPS to introduce our awardee.
Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to be here representing TOPS Club, a nonprofit organization based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, with thousands of members of chapters located worldwide, the majority of which are in the United States and in Canada. Its objectives are to sponsor research and foster weight management support groups. I myself have struggled with obesity since my childhood. When I decided I wanted to invest in myself and in my health, it was recommended to me to try TOPS. And I found out that right around the corner, 5 minutes from my house, right in my neighborhood, there was a TOPS chapter, as there probably is one in your neighborhood as well. People often ask me why I chose TOPS over the myriad of other health organizations and programs that are out there, and I tell them it's because I was way too cheap to pay for them. TOPS is volunteer-based, it's nonprofit, and it is low cost. And as such, it has limited resources, but it is important for TOPS to take a slice of those resources and reward those worthy individuals working towards the same goals that we have, curtailing obesity. TOPS has been a supporter of Obesity Canada for more than a decade, and sponsoring the TOPS New Investigator Research Award is our way of acknowledging the truly innovative and important research that goes on in Canada. This award recognizes an individual for a singular achievement or career contribution to research in the field of obesity. This year's recipient is Dr. Lori Twells. Dr. Twells is an associate professor in the School of Pharmacy and Faculty of Medicine at Memorial University in St. John's, Newfoundland. She is a clinical epidemiologist with expertise in epidemiology, health economics, health policy, primary data collection, and analysis of large administrative data sets. Her current research publications are in the area of epidemiology of adult obesity in Canada, bariatric surgery as a treatment for obesity, and the prevention of childhood obesity with a focus on infant nutrition. I think it is important to mention that the glowing nomination letter for Dr. Twells was jointly submitted by two former TOPS New Investigator Award winners, which is surely an endorsement of her worthiness for this award. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Lori Twells.
Put this. You want to take a picture?
Yeah, I can
Okay.
take a picture.
You're George.
Oh, okay.
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 And then turn that.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah, there we go. Awesome.
Thank you. Oh, hold on. Thank you, Dawn. Can everybody hear me? Because I've got this around me. Thank you very much, Dawn. I feel very honored to be here today, to be the recipient of this award. I'm not sure about the descriptors new or young, but you'll probably get to know why I might be considered new in a way when I talk a little bit about my journey to where I am at the moment in terms of being an academic. But I'd also like to thank Obesity Canada for the award as well, and my nominating faculty, Dr. Mary Forhan and Dr. Jennifer Cook, who are both here, and also TOPS for actually providing the award as well. So I am going to get started. Make sure I know which. Okay, so I actually met Jim and Dawn earlier today at the TOPS booth. And I wanted to introduce myself as the award winner, and we had a little chat about TOPS. I'd been on the website when I was actually nominated for the award and saw all the great work they were doing. And then I asked them to get a picture so that I could use it for my presentation. And Dawn said, well, you get in the picture too. And I said, I can't get in the picture. I haven't actually got the award yet. I don't want to put a picture up with me looking like I've got the award when I haven't actually received it yet. So I said, I'll slip that into my presentation right at the beginning. And there they are, Dawn and Jim. I don't have any conflicts of interest that actually are relevant to this presentation. And so I will get started. So what I thought I would do, given it's the end of the conference and everybody is probably really tired of academic talks and all the information and new information that everybody's learned over the last 4 days, is lighten it up a little tiny bit. And also give you some of that, but also talk a little bit about the path that I have taken myself to get here. A lived experience as a researcher, so to speak. Also give you an update on the prevalence of obesity in Canada in terms of some of the numbers. And as much as we've heard some of that throughout the last 4 days, there's actually a couple of things that are interesting that are going on in terms of some of that data, which I think is worth bringing attention to. I'll talk a little bit about some of the key findings from my own research, primarily related to bariatric surgery, and then just really briefly talk about my current research. So in terms of my own path, in 1992, I finished an economics degree at Memorial University, and then spent a year traveling in Australia and New Zealand, where I met my future husband, Alex, who was a Brit. After that, we decided to actually relocate to London, where we would both look for our first real jobs. We moved to London, rented a flat in Notting Hill, and basically started living a fantastic life in London for the next 8 years. During that time, pretty soon, oops, hold on now, let me just a couple of pictures that didn't come up, doesn't matter. During that time, I quickly got a job with PricewaterhouseCoopers, which was then Coopers & Lybrand, and spent the next 8 years working in the investment banking industry. Totally different from what we all do here today. And basically spent time traveling around Europe, traveling around the United Kingdom, doing audits of investment banks. A very nice industry to work in when it comes to money and expense accounts. I actually managed to spend 3 months working in Paris in a hotel, working in a hotel right next to the Eiffel Tower. And I thought, this is fantastic, like life cannot get any better. I actually shared a very short story with the workshop we gave earlier in the week related to some of the, we'd asked our people actually attending the workshop what was the oddest thing they'd ever eaten. And I actually shared this quick little quick little story from Paris when I was there. We'd gone out to a restaurant and I was actually thinking my French was better than it was. And ordered something off the menu. And one of the clients looked at me and said, he said, oh, vous êtes risqué. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, with your food choice. And I said, just looks like beef meatballs to me. And so the beef meatballs came and I ate them and I thought they were quite good. And then eventually somebody at the table said, you know you were eating cow's testicles. And I said, okay, they were still good, but thanks for letting me know. So basically, I did that kind of work for 8 years, and I did enjoy it. And when I look back on reflection, I really feel that I learned a lot from that time, which has actually brought me to where I am today in terms of the skills. Because when you work in private industry, you do a lot of project management, you do a lot of work around budgets, and you're actually expected to give a lot of presentations on an ongoing basis to a group of people that are not near as nice as academic researchers when you're talking to bankers. So shortly after that, I was becoming a little bit sort of thinking, I need a change. And I actually went back to Newfoundland, which is where I'm from, and actually spoke to one of my mentors there in the economics department and said, I'm really not happy with this industry. It's not my passion. But I'm kind of been there a long time now. Where should I go? And I guess we worked out between us that actually my real interest was health. I hadn't actually done a lot of work in health, but I think I was just interested and drawn to that field. And he said, well, you're living in London. He said, the best thing you should do is go to one of the good universities. But he said, you really probably need to build on your skills that you've already got. You can't go and start again. So he basically recommended that I applied to the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine and the London School of Economics. And there's a joint degree that's actually offered there in epidemiology, health policy, and health economics. And that's what I did. So I actually spent the next 2 years actually studying epidemiology and health policy, which I knew from day one when I walked into the LSE that I absolutely loved, because it just opened up my whole entire world to a whole different area. Learning about the WHO holistic definition of health, that health wasn't just being healthy. It was mental, it was physical, it was emotional, it was spiritual. Talking about determinants of health, which I just thought was the healthcare system. I learned about the fact that it was the environment, it was our biology, it was our genetics, it was our socioeconomic status. And day after day, we were told that we, in fact, had won the lottery because we were already graduate students in terms of health. So we knew that we were already probably going to have better health than others. We also talked a lot about the changing landscape of illness. So everything from the fact that we'd spent so much time studying and dealing with communicable diseases, but now we were moving into an era of chronic illness. And at the time, obesity wasn't even really mentioned. I look back actually at some of my notes, which I've still kept, and we were talking about diabetes, cancer, and dementia. And one of the professors at the London School of Hygiene came in one day and put up a big slide, and it just sort of struck me at the time, and I think it still resonates, which is, he said, the really good news about life, he said, is we're all living longer. And then he put up another slide, and then he said, and the really bad news is we're all living longer. Which basically meant that an epidemic of chronic illness was going to be sort of projected going forward. The other thing that was really interesting from those 2 years was that there was a real push, and this was 1998 to 2000, for scientists to be part of health policy making and advocacy, which actually was something that hadn't really been taking place up to this point. So scientists did their work, they stayed in their sort of ivory towers, they looked at data, but they didn't venture out into the real world to actually have opinions and be in the media and actually try and influence policy. And there was a real push from both those schools that, in fact, scientists should take on that role and be advocates. And I think I just took a lot of things away from that particular time. So moving on, I did my master's there for 2 years. And a side story to that is that I actually had 3 children, and that's a different presentation in terms of work-life balance. But at this point, my husband and I actually decided that our lives was quite busy. We were commuting. It was, it's a lot of time spent in a busy city, and we decided to actually relocate back to St. John's, which is where I was from, to a much quieter lifestyle and a sort of family environment. So we decided to move back. And for those people that may or may not know, Newfoundland is the most easterly province in Canada. St. John's is the most easterly city in North America, and it's pretty much out in the Atlantic. So actually, when we decided to move back, what we were really moving back to was this. And if you don't know what that is, it's this, because we're probably the foggiest city in Canada as well. But weather aside, that was fine. So moving on, I basically managed to get myself a job very quickly with an agency that was called the Newfoundland and Labrador Centre for Applied Health Research. And I was writing research proposals, doing grants, doing some fun stuff. And then a couple of years into that job, the director said to me, there's some new data coming out from Statistics Canada. And I didn't know what he was talking about at the time. And he said, it's all about obesity. And he's actually from Toronto. And he said, it's not looking good for Newfoundland. And I said, that's interesting. And so lo and behold, he asked me to actually organize a public forum on obesity. And being the researcher that I was at the time, I did my research, tried to find out who were the experts in Canada. And I actually invited 4 people who were the experts and still are the experts in obesity research in Canada. Dr. Diane Finegood, Dr. Bob Ross, Dr. Ian Jensen, and Dr. Peter Kaczmarzyk, who's now in the States, to come to this public forum and tell us in Newfoundland everything we needed to know about obesity, which is what they did. And they all came and we spent 2 days discussing obesity. And it's interesting just to look back and see, how much has changed since that public forum, because that happened in 2004 and 2005. But the things I took away from that forum at the time, some of them still actually are the same as today, that obesity had increased dramatically since the 1980s, that the causes were multifactorial, that they were then referring to it as an individual lifestyle choice or a risk factor. And there was limited discussion on interventions or prevention because really there wasn't that much out there at that point in time. And of course, when you looked at data, Newfoundland and Labrador was one of the provinces with the highest rates in the country. And I do always like to qualify that because I do get interviewed a lot because people love to have that, extreme one thing to the other. And the Atlantic provinces in general tend to have higher prevalence rates of obesity in Canada. And obesity really goes from sort of the highest in the east coast of Canada to the lowest in the west coast, with a few little anomalies in between. So after that forum, I was quite taken, actually. I thought, wow, this is interesting. I did not know that. And it sort of really drew me in. And I think a lot of it was to do with those speakers, actually, in terms of what they told us. And so that area, actually, I think I'm one slide behind here. The area really sort of resonated with me in terms of population health. So the first thing I did while I was, in fact, actually still working with this agency was do a study related to prevention. Because I think when we all first find out about obesity, we tend to think about prevention. I just thought, okay, we've got an issue here. We've got to kind of stop this issue from happening. And in our own population, we've got to go back to some root causes. We've got to go back to the beginning. And so myself and a pediatrician, Leanne Newhook, actually did a small study in Newfoundland looking at the prevention around exclusive breastfeeding and childhood obesity. And we published this work, obviously. And what we discovered through our small study was that 25% of our preschool population, so kids before they even got into school, were actually overweight or obese, so 1 in 4. And also we did find that exclusive breastfeeding was protective for childhood obesity with an adjusted odds ratio of 0.35, which was actually controlling for all the socioeconomic confounders that sort of confound that relationship. And this is an area of interest. I'm still doing a lot of work in this area. I won't be talking about it today. But I think the research kind of sits on both sides. There's many, many studies that are showing a protective impact in terms of breastfeeding and childhood obesity, and there's others that are showing no difference. And a lot of it just comes down to data quality. Because it's actually very difficult to get good exposure data on breastfeeding unless you're literally collecting data from a mother every single day. Whether you ask them to give you self-reported data, whether you call them every week, it's difficult to get the data sort of on a daily basis. So the data is limited in that respect. After I finished that study, what I decided to do was do a PhD, because I was obviously really drawn to the area and I wanted to learn a lot more about obesity. And again, building on my background in terms of the health economics and the numbers piece, I decided to look at obesity and its impact on our provincial healthcare system. And these were the key findings of this study. Basically, in adults affected by obesity, 64 to 75% reported more than 2 chronic conditions. These individuals visited their doctor 50% more often than normal weight individuals. They had healthcare costs that were about 1/3 higher than people living with normal sort of BMIs. But what was really interesting was that actually when you did the subgroup analysis, it was primarily the individuals living with severe obesity, we'll call it, that were actually driving those numbers. So if you just lumped everything together, it looked like it was everything. It looked like it was all BMIs greater than 30, but in fact, when you did the subgroup analysis, it was really the severe obesity categories that were driving that numbers. And that really kind of sparked my interest in the sense that what I found was that the media and even really health professionals and people in the system are continually trying to lump sort of BMIs together as one particular group. But I do actually feel that there is a group within the sort of BMI greater than 30 that do have a higher health risk. And that's really the group that I've decided to advocate for when it comes to treatment, because there is no question, if you have severe obesity, chances are you're at a much higher health risk than others. So just to remind people in terms of that relationship between BMI and mortality, and I've just got a couple of slides here, but this is a relationship which is referred to as a J or U-shaped relationship. And you see this in a number of studies. This is an old one, but there's recent ones, and I'll show you another one in a minute. But basically what it means is that at either end of that BMI spectrum, health risk starts to increase. So at the lower ends, when people are very underweight or low weight, your health risk for mortality goes up, but actually at the high end, your health risk goes up as well. But what you can see there in the middle is that it's a relatively flat curve for a large portion of that, including that what we refer to as the overweight category. And your health risk really only starts to go up after a BMI of 30, but then it really starts to go up exponentially after about a BMI of 35. The reason being is that your risk of various conditions goes up the higher your BMI is. So in terms of ischemic heart disease and stroke and cancers, they will push that mortality risk up at the higher BMIs. In terms of impaired quality of life, this is some data I've put together from a number of different studies. So again, we've got an increased risk of mortality, but what about impaired quality of life? So this is data that comes from patients actually filling out what's referred to as the EQ5D visual analog scale, and many people may be familiar with it or have seen this sort of quality of life data before. But it's basically just a thermometer where you circle your current day health, how you feel on that particular day, anywhere from 0 to 100. So when patients come in, say, for example, who are waiting for surgery, we ask them to fill out this visual analog scale because we want to look at what happens after surgery. But this has been done for all populations. It can be done for all of us here today if we wanted it to be done, for example. And what this data is showing you in that box is basically just population norms. So this is US data that shows you what's the general population norm, which is everybody for that visual analog scale, where 0 would be your worst health ever and 100 would be great health. So you can see in the States, when they've done this for a general population, it's about 82. Alberta's actually done this for their own province. It comes up at 85. So their population norms, their health is quite good, self-perceived health. When you look at actual patients with coronary heart disease, it drops down to about 63. Type 2 diabetes is about 68. People living with severe obesity without any chronic comorbidities, it's 74. But then when you look at treatment-seeking individuals, bariatric surgery patients, for example, who are seeking treatment, their quality of life drops down quite low to 58. So they have very impaired quality of life. In terms of actually, again, looking at that relationship between severe obesity and life expectancy, what you can see here, this is called the Kaplan-Meier survival curve. And basically what you can see, if you just go across from, say, 50% on that graph between the 40 and 60, is that you would see in that red line there, that would be a group with BMI, people living with a BMI greater than 40. And that means your life expectancy, if you follow it down on the x-axis, is 70. So for people with a BMI greater than 40, you are living 10 years less than people with a BMI between 22 and 23. So your life expectancy is reduced by about 10 years. So this is serious stuff. This is, to me, this is serious. And this is why I feel people living with severe obesity should get treatment. And it's one of the reasons why I'm continually advocating for bariatric surgery in particular, but really any treatment that would help reduce the health risk in this population. So moving on to some of the obesity epidemiology data. These are a couple of graphs that have been published over a number of years. In fact, the first graphs were published by Peter Kaczmarzyk, and I had seen them presented actually 15 years ago. And I've been adding to these graphs over the last couple of years as well. So what this data just shows you really briefly, and that top line is overweight. It kind of looks like overweight is actually stable and has been stable for a long time. But what you don't see here on this graph is the normal weight graph, the normal weight curve. So really, people are not just staying overweight, they're tending to move into the next category. So the normal weight category is actually going down. The overweight looks like it's stable, but actually people are now moving into the obese category as well. And it's what we call tracking for obesity. So people move through the categories and they don't typically stay in that overweight category, which is why we have a higher prevalence of obesity. But what this is basically showing you is that obesity, in general, the prevalence right now is about 20% if you just look at self-report data. But if you actually look at measured data, it's closer to 1 in 4, or 26%. And obese class 1, 2, and 3, again, add up to about 20% as well. So this actually equates to 8.3 million adults living with obesity in Canada. When you actually look at the percentage increases, what you find is that the graph sort of flips over, and those top two lines are actually severe obesity, classes 2 and 3. So the biggest percentage increases have actually been in class 2 and 3 obesity versus just class 1 obesity as well. So again, that's where we're seeing the increase in numbers, which is driving the obesity prevalence, but it's really the severe obesity that's actually driving those numbers. Now, what's interesting here is that Statistics Canada published an infographic recently. Interesting because they're kind of trying to suggest we have a good news story going on. We're talking about the prevalence of obesity. This is recent data. They're talking about the fact that obesity is 27%. This is using measured data, which is that 26.4%. But they also have a little caveat there, which says obesity has remained stable over 10 years, from 2007 to 2017, which isn't what I believe is quite true in the sense that we still have a percentage increase going up. But obese class 1 does appear to be leveling off a little bit, but actually the higher classes of 2 and 3 are actually increasing. So we need to be cautious of numbers and how we see them. The other thing that's interesting that's happening as well is that actually if you combine that with waist circumference data, things are changing, and this could even be more concerning. So this is work that's actually published by Dr. Ian Jansen in relation to waist circumference, which we also know is a major risk factor for health conditions and mortality. Because a lot of the fat around the abdominal area and the visceral area actually it provides you at a higher health risk, even compared to BMI. And some work that he's published recently in 2 papers have looked at the sort of corresponding waist circumference increase in terms of actually increasing 1 unit of BMI 20 years ago versus sort of 2007 and 2009. So in 1981, when you looked at health survey data, which was measured data, if you looked at a 1 unit increase in actual BMI, it corresponded to about 1.98 centimeters in terms of waist circumference. But if you look at more recent measured data, that 1 unit in BMI actually equates to 2.2 centimeters in waist circumference. And these are his findings. This is what he said in one of his papers. Temporal changes in obesity based on waist circumference are more pronounced than changes in BMI. The obesity phenotype is changing. So maybe we aren't going to be getting bigger based on BMI, but we are going to be getting rounder based on waist circumference. And we know that health risk is as much associated with the visceral area than it is with getting bigger. In fact, probably a better predictor. So that's something to be looking for and thinking about. So just moving fast forward a little tiny bit, in 2011, our province actually established a bariatric surgery program in relation to a lot of lobbying that had been going on for a couple of years. And again, just on numbers in our own population, and all the provinces have similar high levels of numbers with this respect. But in our particular population, 1 in 3 adults, or 30% of the population, is affected by obesity in general. 8%, which equates to 30,000 people, are living with severe obesity in our population with a BMI greater than 35. So based on these numbers and a kind of high group of clinicians and decision makers that were lobbying, we established a multidisciplinary bariatric surgery program, which actually includes 3 surgeons, a nurse practitioner, and a dietitian. And the goal was to try and do 100 laparoscopic sleeve gastrectomies a year. And this was in 2011. Based on that, I've been speaking with the main bariatric surgeon there for a couple of years leading up to this. He knew I was interested in obesity research, and he said, Laurie, we're starting up this program. Sleeve gastrectomy is actually an investigational procedure at this point in time. I think we need to do some research. So of course, that was just a fantastic in for me to actually start off doing research right from the beginning when the program first started. And I hopped on that, and within a month over Christmas, he'd come to me before Christmas and said the first surgery is going to be in a few months. And I managed to pull a key team of people together to actually start studying the patients from day one. So as soon as the patients came in, we started collecting data. And I do have to put a shout out here to Dr. Sharma and Dr. Raj Podwell, who had actually been doing the Apple study in Alberta, which is a study very similar to this one, and many people will have seen some of the results from that. But we actually connected with both of those faculty members and actually kind of planned and actually organized a lot of our study around that Apple study. We were only looking at sleeves versus other things, but it actually gave us a heads up in terms of actually the type of data we might want to collect. So we actually started a study that's called the Newfoundland and Labrador Bariatric Surgery Cohort Study. Until this point, actually up to this point, we've published about 20 studies using this data. We started looking at pre-surgical outcomes. We started looking at surgical outcomes, complications, following the patients over time, collecting quality of life data. We're very keen on following them long term. So we now have patients that are already 7 and 8 years out post-sleeve gastrectomy. We were using quantitative and qualitative methods as well. And really the goal was to increase our understanding of obesity, to advocate for patients for treatment, and to ensure the right patients receive the right treatment at the right time. So these are just some of the key findings we found from all these studies, and so in some ways they're just some interesting ones. But one of the key findings we found, I had a student called Hilary Price who actually surveyed some of the patients before surgery. We were interested in finding out, why did people want to lose weight? Why were they actually treatment seeking? Why were they looking for surgery? And we actually did a couple of different questionnaires for a number of patients. In this particular group, it was 84 pre-surgery patients who filled out a number of questionnaires that actually asked them what were those factors that were influencing their weight loss goal. And then we analyzed the data and put it together like this. But what was interesting was the way that the data kind of fell out. So really, the top 3 reasons why people are choosing surgery are health related. So if you ask actually people just that in general, they don't always think that. People often say it's the easy way out, they just want to look better, they don't want to diet. But actually when it comes down to it, patients that are looking for surgery that have a weight loss goal are doing it for health reasons. And this data has been replicated in a number of other studies where in fact the color, sort of the way it pans out in terms of those particular factors are very similar across the board. So health reasons, medical conditions, physical comfort, how you feel about yourself psychologically, so your mental health. They're not looking for surgery to look like a celebrity. They're not feeling peer pressure. It's really all about health. In terms of another finding that came out of a different questionnaire that we offered to these patients was all around weight loss expectations. So when you ask patients who are looking for surgery, what is their goal weight, how much they think they'd like to lose post-surgery, they're actually giving you a goal weight that we actually know as health professionals or a bariatric care program that they're most likely not able to achieve with surgery. Right? So we know from a lot of research already that sleeve gastrectomy results in a certain amount of weight loss, and that shaded area on that graph actually shows you where that weight loss will be. Most of these patients will still have BMIs over 30. They will still be considered people living with obesity, but their health risk, as we know, will be diminished incredibly. But their goal weight is not one they're going to achieve. So we use this information to actually help manage expectations of patients as well. Because in terms of mental health, that has a huge impact on whether or not you think you're going to be successful or not post-surgery. And we've interviewed patients post-surgery and found in the early days that that was one of the things that was driving their feeling of not having been successful. I didn't get to the weight that I wanted to get to, but you were never going to get there based on the research that we already know. And it's not to say that you will tell patients they're never going to get there, because of course with extra lifestyle and other interventions, they may do so. But we also need to be upfront with patients that for the most part, this is the weight loss that we expect to see after surgery. And that was built into our educational tools as well. Another study we did actually while patients were waiting for surgery was some qualitative work to see what were people's experiences that brought them to this point. What were the reasons why they were looking for surgery, but why did they think they'd actually gained this weight that required them having to have surgery or looking for a treatment? And these were some of the key themes. So one was the struggles with weight began in childhood. A couple of quotes here. It's hereditary. A lot of people in my family are big. This was from Sam. I have never been slim. I have never been below a size 18 or 20. Never. I don't remember as a child being small. So a portion of our population were always big. Okay, they were big from being a child. And I heard that over the last couple of days from some of the patients that were giving their stories as well, which is the fact that they were actually always big. That hadn't changed. Number two, rapid weight gain attributed to important life events. In this particular one, it was about pregnancy, and we saw a lot of this in that population. I only gained weight after I had my daughter. I was 127 pounds when I got pregnant. I went up to 181, and I never went below that after. And this was a patient who was seeking treatment who was now in her 60s and 300 pounds. So again, a particular life event. Exhaustion around the fact that they were always gaining and losing weight. I guess the most I've ever lost at one go is 70 or 80 pounds, which is a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of discipline and denial. Then no matter what, it seems like every time after a couple of months, it starts creeping back. And then all of a sudden you are where you were or worse. Then it's like, oh my God, how did I do that? How could I be so stupid? So these were some of the themes that came out of that early qualitative work, which really in my mind just helped me understand that actually obesity is very heterogeneous. Every story is unique. It's not just the numbers, it's not just the epidemiology, and there's reasons why people have got to this point. So in terms of our major study, that really is the kind of core of that whole project. It's been a prospective cohort study where we've been following the first 200 patients over time. And I'll just present to you a little bit of that data here. This patient population pretty much looks like any other bariatric population across the country. The average age is about 44, primarily females, usually about 80%. Mean BMI about 49. Number of chronic conditions greater than 4, 75%, close to 75%. So most of these patients have multi-comorbidity, and their quality of life, as we know, is quite low. In terms of the multimorbidity, there are also 1 in 5 of these patients have key risk factors for increasing mortality or early death. So almost 50% had hypertension, 50% dyslipidemia, 43% of this group had type 2 diabetes, and 1 in 5 actually had all three, along with the other multimorbidity that they also presented with. In terms of excess weight loss, many of us know these numbers. Bariatric surgery is the most effective at the moment for significant weight loss over the early days anyway, the first 2 years. The bottom line here really just shows you that about most of the sample, the majority of the sample lost about 1/3 of their body weight. And that equals about 100 pounds in those first 2 years. It seems like the weight loss peaks between 18 and 24 months. And starts to, we see some regain. So we know some of these patients post this time period. I've been following some of these patients now, and I don't have the data here, but obviously we know there is some weight regain. It doesn't appear that patients ever go back to where they were. They're still very satisfied with the weight loss that they've had. In terms of quality of life, we administered a number of tools to these patients. And this data really just shows you the EQ5D data, which asks about a number of different domains. So for example, have there been improvements in your health related to mobility, self-care, usual activities, pain and discomfort, or anxiety and depression? So that first blue bar is your pre-surgery marker, and that tells you what percentage of people were reporting some or extreme problems. So you can see in the beginning, everybody is reporting some or extreme problems in most of those domains. Self-care is quite low. It's only 10% of the population, but 67% of that population are actually reporting pain and discomfort, some or extreme problems. And what you can see over time up to those 2 years is there's a significant decrease in the number of people reporting some or extreme problems. What I think is interesting, and I think is an area that is still a little bit of an unknown, is the mental health piece. So what we're seeing is very soon after that first year, everybody's reporting a sort of really big increase in mental health, and everybody feels great. But it's not long before they're coming back to the anxiety and the depression is seeping back in. And I don't think we really know why that's happening at the moment, and I think it's an area for exploration. In terms of that visual analog scale, as I showed you before, patients are coming in with a quality of life visual analog scale of about 60, and actually 2 years after surgery, they're at 80. So they're actually at the population norm for general health, which is fantastic. In terms of another tool we've actually administered, the impact of weight on quality of light. This one specifically gets at the impact of weight on quality of life domains. So you can see the domains there on the bottom: physical function, self-esteem, sexual life, public distress, work, and then just there's a total score. Higher scores here mean that there's actually less impact of that domain on the person. So you can see all these scores have gone up. And these are just some of the examples on the right of the types of things that will have been improved because of that weight loss. So I have trouble picking up objects. That's improved. I'm embarrassed to be seen in public places. Less embarrassed. I avoid sexual encounters whenever possible. Less impact. I worry about fitting into seats in public places. Again, an improvement in scores. I am less productive than I could be, and that score has gone up as well. So the quality of life domains go up dramatically. This is another tool, the SF12, which really just shows the same results. So I won't go into detail. There's a lot of data here. But just to point out the fact that really, again, it's the two areas that are not improving that we need to look at. So kind of the emotional quality of life and the mental health kind of peak at 12 months, and then they start to go down. And it looks like some of the long-term data may suggest that they go even lower than they were before surgery. And of course, that won't be for everybody, but it's a sort of red flag to find out what is going on here. Just to show you that we actually also published a systematic review a couple of years ago that looked at the long-term health-related quality of life of patients who had had bariatric surgery. And we actually wanted to look beyond 5 years because, again, we want to be able to tell patients that, in fact, yes, there may be some roller coaster with things going on after surgery, but in general, patients actually, their quality of life between 5 and 25 years is improved after bariatric surgery. And for some very strange reason, that got picked up by the New York Times, and I was interviewed about that paper. But it was interesting that there was an interest in knowing what are the long-term impacts of health-related quality of life on bariatric surgery patients, and they're positive. The last thing I'll say is that bariatric surgery is a gendered issue. We also published a study on this with the rationale being that women undergo bariatric surgery nearly 5 times at the rate of men. As you can see from that data I showed you, most bariatric populations are 80% women, 20% men, even though the prevalence of severe obesity is almost equal. So men are not seeking treatment. That's nothing new. Men don't seek treatment as much as women do, but there's obviously something going on. Fewer men seek out bariatric surgery as a treatment for obesity, like I said, and even though the prevalences are quite similar. So we were interested in just getting a little bit of information of knowing what's going on there. And this is just a little brief summary of that paper. But basically, in terms of the gender analysis, men talked more about occupational work and the discouraging effect of women-only oriented weight loss programs. And I think that's really interesting. Many of those weight loss programs are absolutely certainly aimed at women, and they're aimed at groups. And typically women like to work in groups as well. From a female perspective, women tended to focus more on the emotional eating, pregnancy, and domestic workloads as to why they were actually seeking out treatment. In terms of the paper we wrote, it was interesting. The paper is actually, in the title, it's called Fat Girls versus Big Guys, because even the terminology is different in terms of how people see themselves. So women tended to describe their weight as deeply affecting their identities and feeling publicly defined by a fat girl identity. It is hard, but I always feel I have to apologize. So I have to make sure that I do things better, or I have to be nicer than other people. I have to be more competent than other people. I can't complain about things because I have to compensate for my size. For men, men rarely use the word fat and expressed pride in their physical strength and focused more on the socially acceptable identity of being a big guy. Even though I'm big, I'm also muscular. I'm still fairly strong. I'm in excellent shape for my size. So you can see there are very different sort of ideas as how you perceive that. And we know some of that comes from societal views and societal pressures. So in summary, I'd just like to say that I guess from my perspective and the data that I look at on a relatively regular basis, severe obesity is still increasing in Canada. Individuals with severe obesity seek out weight loss for health reasons, but may have some unrealistic weight loss expectations that need to be managed. Obesity is heterogeneous. Every story is unique. Bariatric surgery results in significant weight loss and improvements in quality of life, but research is needed in the area of mental health in particular. And seeking out bariatric surgery is a gendered issue that requires further study. These are just some of the studies that we're currently doing. People often ask me, you must have a massive bariatric center going on in terms of all the research you're doing. But I guess success kind of breeds success, and the fact that we started off, we had an opportunity that we took, and we had a number of people involved, and now people just come to me continually asking to do research in this area, and they themselves are being drawn in. We're looking at longer term data for our sleeve study, obviously. We're doing a cost effectiveness study of bariatric surgery, and that came up earlier today around the different surgeries in terms of the surgeons we were talking to. They're going to be very interested in that. We're also doing a clinical trial evaluating a 12-week prescription exercise on patterns of ovulation in women living with obesity. We're developing a new tool to evaluate the impact of weight loss interventions on quality of life with Dr. Nancy Mayo at McGill and her PhD students, who's here somewhere. And we're also assessing weight bias with a medical school student who's very interested in what he's seeing as a first-year medical student. And he gave a presentation here a couple of days ago, and he himself has initiated that project. As everybody always knows, there's tons of people that have to work on these projects. It's never just one person, so thank you. And a couple of my students and group are here as well. And the funders, obviously, of a number of these studies. Thank you to them as well. And thank you to Obesity Canada and TOPS. And that is my family whale watching last summer. Thank you. Probably went more than my 25 minutes, but if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
I don't think as the star you don't have to take questions.
Oh, good.
That's one of the gifts of getting this award.
Excellent. I can.
Thank you, Laurie. That was a great way to end the conference with regards to giving a presentation. It's much appreciated, and your career path was certainly extremely interesting, and I'm sure that many of the ones that are thinking or thought maybe they're not in the right area, I think you're given a lot of inspiration, so I really appreciate that. I'm going to call upon our co-chairs for the student and new professionals to come up here. Tanya Nagpal and Nadia Brown to give out the awards.
All right, so at every summit, we present awards to the many bright young minds that attend and present at the summit. And so we're going to start off by announcing the winners of the Student Travel Award. We ask all of the winners to please come up this way and then just hang out on the stage so we can get a picture with all the winners at the end. So this year's winners for the Student Travel Award are Alicia Taylor, Jaida Ostinelli, Soren Harnois LeBlanc, Ina Maltese Payette, Ioma Adache, Jacqueline Brown, Karishma Hossein, Kenya Costa Ducan, Christine Godzuik, Matea Balan, Megan McGee, Prince Kevin Daniels, Rachel Acton, and Sophia LaForest. I'll slow down next time. And now we will be announcing the awards for the poster, oral presentation, and Pecha Kucha. I will again call all of the recipients, and we ask them to wait on stage, but I will go slower. All right. So the winner of the undergraduate poster award from Memorial University, Malcolm Snow. The winner of the Masters Poster Award from the University of British Columbia, Kiana Yao. The winner of the PhD Poster Award from University of Toronto, Victoria Tokars. Stay on stage. Stay. And the winner of the Undergraduate Oral Presentation Award from the University of Ottawa, Brandon Heidinger. The winner of the Masters Oral Presentation Award from Ontario Technology University, Jacqueline Brown. The winner of the PhD Oral Presentation Award from the University of Toronto, Megan McGee. The honorable mention for the Pecha Kucha from the University of Toronto, Laura Vigier. And the winner of the Pecha Kucha Award from the University of Ottawa, Kurt McInnes.
Come on, Eric. It's the only award you'll ever win.
And congratulations to our winners.
All right, I get the check too.
Oh.
So, hello everyone. My name is Tanya, and I have the pleasure of presenting with Nadia today. We had the opportunity to be the chair and co-chair of the Obesity Canada Students and New Professionals Student Committee this year. Obesity Canada is an organization that really places their students and their new professionals at the forefront and provides us with the support and opportunities to actively engage in the work being done within the organization. They give us a voice within the organization and countless opportunities to learn, network, and grow. So our quick presentation today is going to give you a little bit of an overview of what we have been doing throughout the year, as well as sharing the work of the many SNPs and local chapters across the universities across Canada. Our initiative links more than 1,200 students and new professionals across Canada. And altogether, we get to participate in the advancement of obesity-related education, research, treatment, and management.
Through our local chapters across Canada, the Students and New Professional Division aims to increase membership across disciplines and advance awareness of Obesity Canada throughout.
So the Students and New Professionals Network includes undergraduates, graduates, master's students, doctoral students, postdoctoral students, new professionals with less than 5 years of completing their degree, and we all come from various backgrounds, including academia, industry, healthcare, government agencies, and more. And these are just a few of our SNPs from this year's exec team. So this year, our SNP executive got to participate in a number of events and organize some new initiatives as well. So this year, we launched the From Grad School and Beyond initiative. This initiative came together because us SNPs thought, well, we would like to learn about the various opportunities we could potentially take our graduate degrees to. So we wanted to learn about where else could I take my master's and PhD research, and what types of jobs or careers could I pursue, both within but also outside of the traditional academic route. So the From Grad School and Beyond is a video series where every month we post a YouTube video with a professional who's taken their master's and PhD degree to perhaps a non-traditional route, and they share their story with us. We also, at the summit, had the SNP Mentorship Breakfast to launch this video series, where we asked mentors within our Obesity Canada network to come and share their experience and their expertise with our SNPs. And if you were there for the breakfast, I think it went very well, if I may say so myself. We also have a mentorship program, and this is actually available year-round. So if you go onto the OC SNP webpage, you'll see that you can sign up at any time for a mentor within the Obesity Canada network. You do this online, and we help you make a match and connect with SNPs across the country, and you could do this based on career interest or maybe research area and more. And so, like I said, this is available year-round, and we continue to make matches all the time. We also had our infographic competition take place this year. This takes place in the fall, where students have the opportunity to submit an infographic related to their research. And this competition allows students to engage in knowledge translation practice. As well, it gives the Obesity Canada Network an opportunity to share your research in a unique way on a national platform. And finally, we also hosted our annual pedometer challenge. So this challenge takes place in March, where we challenge all of our chapters, all of our SNPs in the various universities to encourage their university to start stepping throughout that week, coming up with unique ways to encourage everyone to increase their daily step counts and their daily physical activity.
So a lot of the chapters organize various initiatives throughout the year, and some of these initiatives that I want to focus on are conferences. Last year in 2018, the Western University organized a student conference, and this was organized by students, and it was for students. And this conference gives students an opportunity to showcase their leadership skills, as well as an opportunity for them to grow, develop, and to spread the word about Obesity Canada. Another event I want to shed light on, a public outreach event, was organized by the University of Waterloo. And this event, Amanda's smiling, this event is called the Perfect Pitch, and it's a half-day competition where you have 4-person teams, and you have undergrad or graduate students, and they plan to address what we call a wicked problem. So it's a wicked problem in today's society, and they define wicked problem as like an obesity epidemic. So it's a event that they've been doing that other chapters are trying to target and trying to do themselves. Another thing I would like to shed light on is fundraising events. As you know, in any organization, you need money in order to thrive. And a lot of these local chapters, they would hold events like bake sales or samosa sales. I'm from the University of Alberta, and we held samosa sales and bake sales in our pedways in order to get money. And we use money from those fundraisers to, like, we had t-shirts for our chapters to spread the word about Obesity Canada on campus and to do any supplies that we need in order for our chapters to just grow and thrive. If you look at the map there, you can see that we have a lot of local chapters and we're distributed throughout Canada. However, if you realize that there are no chapters in New Brunswick or PEI, so if anybody here in this room is from New Brunswick or PEI, yes, we would like to start a new local chapter. Please feel free at the end of this presentation to come to Tanya or I, or go to anybody in this room if you're interested in starting a local chapter in any of those provinces.
At this time, I would like to invite you to help me please congratulate all of the work that's been done at all of our local chapters at the universities represented here. Now, we have our Obesity Canada Students and New Professionals 2019 awards to hand out. Before I do that, I'd like to thank everyone who has supported the SNPs this year, all of those who planned all of the events that occurred across the country, attended those events, and I'd also like to thank those who took the time to nominate the individuals that we will be recognizing today. So first, we have our Pedometer Challenge winning chapter. So like I said, the Pedometer Challenge took place in March, and this chapter had an average of over 16,000 steps taken daily by their participants. So please help me in congratulating our winning chapter, Western University. I'm gonna ask Roberta to come up on stage to collect the award as one of our top 3 national steppers. No, come in the picture.
Yay.
Yeah.
Go Western.
Okay, it gives me extreme pleasure to present the Chapter Award of the Year to the chapter that has always set the bar high for all chapters throughout our local chapters. And they have been setting initiatives that are innovative, unique, but yet well executed. This year, Chapter Award goes to, who do you think, Amanda? University of Waterloo. Get somebody from Waterloo chapter to come and receive this award.
More than one can come.
Oh, I guess whoever is here. Come on up, the more the merrier.
Next, we have our Rising Star Award. The Rising Star Award is the highest honor given to a promising member of the Obesity Canada Students and New Professionals Network. The winner is nominated by their peers. This year's recipient has been involved with her local SNP chapter, and even after she graduated, her team still reaches out to her for her ongoing mentorship and support. As a graduate student, she was on the National Student Committee, including fulfilling the role of chair, and to date, she is still there to support the new team, including actively recruiting and trying to increase participation. She is currently a CIHR Impact Fellow, and she continues to support Obesity Canada and the SNP activities. She is an extremely energetic, welcoming, and supportive peer and mentor, a promising researcher in the field of obesity, a mentor to all SNPs, and a deserving recipient of this award. The 2019 Rising Star Award winner is Dr. Rebecca Liu from the University of Ottawa.
Faculty Supervisor Award. This award aims to reward and recognize a faculty member who has demonstrated excellence in their teaching, research, and service to the university, community, and their trainees. The award also recognizes a faculty member who has excelled in nurturing trainee research development in his or her discipline, who has demonstrated outstanding teaching abilities, and who exhibits a passion and enthusiasm for teaching and learning. The 2019 Faculty Supervisor Award goes to Dr. Chris Arden from York University.
All right, so every other year, the students take the reins and we host the Canadian Obesity Student Meeting. So we'll be seeing you next year in 2020, and we get to announce our host for 2020. Congratulations, the responsibility is headed to York University. So we will be seeing you all in Toronto next year. And with that, Nadia and I would like to again take this opportunity to thank the network for the many exciting ways and unique opportunities they provide their students and new professionals. We'd also like to take the moment to thank the amazing team that we had the opportunity to work with. So if I could please ask the OC SNP exec in the audience to please stand wherever you are. We have Rebecca, Kristen, Megan, Laura, Miriam, Steph, Catherine, Joyla, Carrie, Farah, Brendan, Amanda, and Melissa. As well, we would like to thank, of course, Arya Sharma, Don Hatanaka, Nicole Pierce, and Brad Hussey for all of their support throughout the year. And we also would like to invite 2 more people on the stage. These 2 people have made it so every time we have an idea, they just make it a reality. So please help me in thanking both Don Hatanaka and Nicole Pierce. You gotta come. We didn't tell them. Thank you. All right, and with that, thank you so much, and we're going to hand it over now back to, it's going to Dr. Sharma.
Somebody forgot their badge. If it doesn't go in the bucket, you're not going to win the raffle. So, all right. Well, I'm going to make this very short. So, thank you all for coming out. It's been a wonderful week. It's been a very busy week. We've been doing this for 12 years. We're learning every time we do it, and it seems like every time we have a summit, the summit gets bigger. I could fairly say for the first couple of summits, I used to know everybody in the room. Now, I think probably 2/3 of the people in the room have no idea who they are. So, and I guess that's good. So thank you all for coming out. I hope you had a wonderful week. Obesity Canada is certainly going to continue all of its efforts. We look towards all of the continuing support that comes. None of this would be possible without your enthusiasm. I'd like to make a special mention of the Public Engagement Committee, whose presence here could hardly be overlooked. They were present throughout the conference. They opened every session. And their work is not yet done because this conference is not really over. Tomorrow we have our first public engagement, what's it exactly called? I forget the name. Community workshop, which is open to the public, and it was sold out, and I think that's going to be something that Obesity Canada is going to do a lot more of. There's also our board of directors meeting tomorrow. There's going to be a strategic planning exercise, and some of us are actually even staying on for Monday, because Monday we have meetings with several MPs and senators, and in the evening there's a reception on the Hill, where we hope to get the message across that obesity is something that needs to be taken very, very seriously. So on that note, I'd like to again remind you the meeting is not entirely over. There are social events. There is a social event this evening. You will have ample time to exercise, relax, maybe take a quick nap, maybe have dinner. I believe it starts at 8:30, and I think it's in the Rose and Crown. Is that the address? Sorry, the Heart and Crown, which I'm told is the place to be in Ottawa on a Friday night. So whatever that means. Okay. Thank you all for coming. See you again in 2 years, and safe travels.